Welcome to True Talk on WMNF 88.5 with Samar and Ahmed. On today's program, we're going to be speaking about the ceasefire that's holding in Gaza. What's next for the people there? Will this become a sustainable peace or into something else? And we're also going to be speaking about an Israeli program targeting churchgoers and churches in the United States with ads and that are pro-Israel and anti-Palestine. And we'll be speaking to a expert that actually was researching this and more when we come back. This is True Talk on WMNF 88.5.
أنا دمي فلسطيني على أرض تلاقيني أنا دمي والله أنا دمي فلسطيني 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 أنا دمي فلسطيني
Welcome to True Talk on WMNF 88.5 with Samar and Ahmed. If you're listening to us live, hello. If you're listening to us on the podcast, this is actually a live radio show as well as a podcast. Samar, Jarrah, and I are here live, and this is Demi Falastini in honor of the Palestinian people. The song in Arabic, Demi Falastini, My Blood is Palestinian, a people that for decades now, Israel has been trying to erase, has been trying to say they don't exist. There's nothing called Palestinian. They refuse to recognize their state or even that they're a people. They just try to call them Arabs. And there are many politicians in this country, in our country here in the United States, that are doing the same thing, spewing this type of genocidal hate, where they actually try to erase an entire population that they never actually existed. So this is our way of saying, to salute the Palestinian people and to wish them the best, and relieve that, at least for now, the genocide has come to a halt, and the bombings have come to a halt, and people are returning to what used to be their homes, but in fact, it's rubble. So, Samar, welcome to the show.
Assalamu alaikum, Ahmed. Welcome to the show, and thank you to our listeners, Ahmed, for contributing to the fund drive and for, I think, helping us reach our goal. We don't yet have
We surpassed the goal, right?
We surpassed it. I hope we raised double what it was intended for us. But thank you, all of you, for believing in WMNF and freedom of speech, and the effort that Ahmed and I put into this show every week for the past 21 or 22 years. So
Not
thank you, Ahmed.
only just
Yeah.
to just to talk about that, not only did we do great, but most of the shows on WMNF did great, and I think WMNF surpassed its own fundraising goal by tens of thousands of dollars. And I think it's a testament to the times that we're in, that people are growing disillusioned with the mainstream media. They're concerned about the state of our democracy, and they see the value of stations like WNF and of shows like True Talk, that, we're speaking truth. We're speaking about issues that concern Americans, and that should concern all of us. And we're talking about issues that the mainstream media refuses to talk about. And the state of our nation is so fragile right now, especially with the current administration there and what's happening. And people are concerned. So definitely, I think it's a testament to the work that WNF is doing. And thank you so much for your support, not just for our show, but for the entire station. Samar.
Yes, Ahmed. I didn't know you wanted me to say something, but yes, if you're asking me about the ceasefire, I'm very glad that it's the bombing, the endless bombing in Gaza ended, and the genocide. I don't think it will hold for long, this ceasefire, but that's another day and another discussion.
Why are you being pessimistic about it?
I'll tell you why. Because with our kind of media coverage and some Western media coverage, where there is only concentration on what Hamas didn't do and is not doing, and how this is framed, as if Hamas is a functioning government and a functioning municipality that has workers and has experts who can dig into the rubble and has gigantic machinery that can remove debris and concrete and find remains of people, whether Palestinian or Israeli. So the way the media is covering is saying what Israel did, but not, what Hamas did and did not do, but what not Israel did. For instance, Israel, according to, I think, number 5 agreement, supposed to return 420 dead bodies of Palestinians. They return maybe 48. So if this is highlighted also, then people will be reading the news saying, okay, both sides need to be fulfilling the agreement. But the way you look at news coverage, you will find that only Hamas didn't fulfill. Hamas didn't return. As if without explaining that Gaza, for God's sake, is a landscape of debris.
Right.
Palestinians can't find their own loved ones. How are they going to even distinguish between a Palestinian and an Israeli after all this time without scientific data and without, what do they call them, Ahmed? These people?
Forensic evidence.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's frustrating about the media narrative is they often say, well, and I think Israel did the same thing. They're playing up on that, saying, they threatened to cut the aid in half because Palestine or Hamas is not fulfilling their end of the deal and returning the dead bodies, or those that were the Israelis that were in captivity and they were killed. Two things is, one, they don't acknowledge that they're actually buried under rubble, sometimes underground, sometimes in tunnels under buildings, and the Palestinians in Gaza don't have the equipment, like you said, to excavate and to work that fast. It's not like they had all these bodies. They make it sound like, and this is the other part that they leave out of the context, that somehow that these Israeli hostages or captives were actually killed by Hamas, and then they were just storing their bodies. But in reality, that's not what happened. In reality, they're actually killed by the Israelis, right? In the bombings. And that's something that it's left out by all the politicians in the media. How were these Israelis actually killed? They were not shot in the head or killed by, Hamas. They were holding them to be able to, return them or to use them as leverage. So they were actually worth more being alive, but they were actually killed. And Hamas had been warning throughout the genocide that this continued bombardment of bombing everything is actually killing the Israelis themselves. And that's what's being left out as far as who actually killed these people.
Exactly. And the other thing that is missing, Ahmed, the fact that there are 10,000 Palestinian hostages. 1,700 are women and children that were abducted from Gaza and taken from Gaza after October 7. And these women and boys have nothing to do with the planning or the execution of what happened on October 7. So nobody is talking about them. And other than that, you have at least, I don't want to say a number and I'm not sure of it, but you have hundreds of Palestinians under what is called administrative detention, which is somebody snatches you from the house, or you're walking in the streets of Jerusalem or the occupied West Bank or Ramallah, and then they put you in jail. So you go and then they tell you, you ask why, you have no clue. They won't tell you. You go to a judge because they can keep you for 6 months. So after 6 months, you're in prison. You have no clue why. You can hire a lawyer, but the lawyer how is he going to defend you? Then you go to a judge, and then after you get renewal of 6 months, 6 months, you have hundreds and hundreds of Palestinians under administrative detention. On top of that, you have thousands who are in prison for very, very minor, let's say, crimes, or like boys throwing stones at occupation forces who are in occupied land. And they would just give them these obscene sentences. But on top of that, Ahmed, there are, I think, there is the system, I think necrophilia, it has a name in English, where they keep bodies of either prisoners or whatever you want to call them, or hostages, who have been dead for maybe 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, and they never return them to use it as a bargaining chip. So if our media would be covering that, or covering, for instance, the idea why the limelight are only on the Israeli hostages, but not the Palestinian one, and why we can cover as media the celebrations of the Israeli families, the parents, the wives, the children, but the Palestinians were told not to celebrate, and if they do, they really suffer tear gas. So there is such an imbalance in the coverage that aims at what has always been happening, Ahmed, which is dehumanizing the Palestinian. So there is no fair coverage even of the points that are related to this peace process, or let's say this agreement, like number 5. Why not report on Article 5 that it stipulates that 420 Palestinian bodies have to be returned?
Right. And for every basically, Israeli body that Hamas is holding, there's like 20 or more Palestinian bodies, dead bodies that Israel is holding, and they use them as bargaining chips, like you said. You only hear, and that's frustrating, even, Trump, when he repeats it, he only talks about the Israelis, whether they were dead or alive, that were in captivity, and no one acknowledges that, in fact, Israel's holding 10 to 20 times that number of people, and they call them prisoners. All the media everywhere, they would say that it's the Israeli hostages that are being released for in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. When in reality, as you said, the overwhelming majority of those so-called prisoners were in this administrative detention, really basically kidnapped off the streets and held. And many of them that were released were actually from Gaza, and they were just picked up during the genocide. And they would, that was part of the policy of the Israelis to detain these civilian Palestinians and just hold them as bargaining chip later. So when they have to, they know eventually they're going to have to do an exchange. So they would, instead of doing exchange for the people they really want to release, who have already been in Israeli prisons for years, they would just release these people they just picked up along the way. So much of it. And now we're seeing, as people are returning and they're digging up and finding bodies, the atrocities that Israel carried out in Gaza, that they've been carrying out for the past 2 years, is now coming to light. But until now, the international press is still not allowed in Gaza, because they know that how they're going to be exposed of all the atrocities that they committed there, and this would be used as evidence.
Yes, why can't they let foreign journalists just go in, and report? I'm reading now from the website of CNN. It says, anger in Israel as Hamas says it's handed over all bodies it can access. Okay, so is there maybe anger also on the Palestinian side? Then there is one item, I'm not sure if you have heard about that Trump tells CNN Israel could resume fighting in Gaza as soon as I say the word. What kind of foreign policy?
What kind of agreement is that?
Like the whole universe is celebrating. Everybody is celebrating. Celebrating what if you can end it in one word?
Yeah, and this is supposed to be the man of peace that deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. But obviously, I mean, for his own benefit, he doesn't want to be the one to resume the war. And I mean, whatever you think of Trump, he gets the credit for stopping this. I mean, it's a low bar, but literally all he had to do is tell Netanyahu stop, and he even says it. After 70,000 people killed, he said that yesterday. 70,000 Palestinians killed. I said enough. This enough could have been said 2 years ago by Biden.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing Trump was able to do and did. Yes, it's, 10 months into his presidency, but he did it instead of Biden. And, what does that say about Biden? And what does it say about the Democratic establishment that just kept going along with what was happening? And so at the end of the day, Trump, maybe because he's more transactional, he's not a ideologue as far as a being Zionist, because, Biden says that he is a Zionist. Trump didn't say he's a Zionist. But it was Trump who stopped the genocide, and he's trying to get credit. And he was, taking, in fact, people were celebrating his name both in Israel and Palestine because he's the one who brought it to an end. But now he's saying, well, with a phone call, I can turn it back on, which just tells you all along it's with the powers with the White House to allow this genocide or not allow it. Samar, our guest, has joined us, so go ahead and introduce him if you would like.
Yes, I'm very happy to say that we have with us Nick Cleveland Stout, who is a research associate in the Democratization Foreign Policy group at Quincy, program at the Quincy Institute. And Nick has just published a very interesting investigative piece. The title is Israel Wants to Pay U.S. Pastors a Stipend to Spread the Word. And he talks about something called geofencing. So welcome to the show, Nick. Good to have you today.
Hey, great to be here with you.
Okay, before we start, what is the meaning of geofencing? Because when reading your article, it came up several times. So let's start with that and then maybe explain what is this piece that you wrote about addressing the churches in the U.S.?
Yeah, so geofencing, it's not a common term that people are aware of, but almost every American with a cell phone has no doubt been geofenced at one point or another. Basically, if you've walked by for instance, a store at a mall, whether it's a Forever 21 store or, you get within a certain radius of like a T-Mobile store, you might get ads from those places. And the reason for that is that these companies, it's oftentimes used as a marketing technique. Companies will buy location-based data from data brokers that vacuum up location services data from all kinds of apps that are running location services on your phone in the background, and then they will either offer marketing services themselves or sell that data to other companies to offer those marketing services. And so, it's the reason that, if you're in a mall and you're walking by an H&M store or whatever, like you might get a coupon show up on your phone or something for H&M. And the idea being that you might be more likely to walk into that store and buy one of their products.
So is this a legitimate marketing tactic, and why, for instance, you think it might be dangerous?
So it is commonplace, and this is, as we'll get into, this is something that this firm that's working for Israel has kind of used as a defense. Like it is a common marketing technique. A lot of privacy advocates have said that it's a very invasive technique and that there should be more limitations on it. There are some states that have banned this as a marketing technique altogether. Oregon and Maryland did that just this year. Oregon did it this year. Maryland did it last year. And so a lot of states, we don't have great data privacy protection laws in the U.S., but in the absence of federal regulation, there are some states that are starting to take this kind of thing more seriously, and especially take it more seriously when it comes to location data in sensitive locations, like churches, for instance, or places of worship, and military installations, things like that.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about this new firm. You say it's called Show Faith by Works, and it is embarking on geofencing, the campaign, the one that you just explained, to target Christian churches and colleges across the American West. What is this company? Is it related to a foreign entity? And that's why, for instance, you are concerned about using geofencing?
Yeah, so this firm, Show Faith by Works, they recently won a $3.2 million contract, and it could go up to upwards of $4 million with the government of Israel, with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Israel, for a number of things, but mainly to do outreach to Christians in the southwestern U.S., being California, Nevada, Arizona, and Colorado. And part of this contract is that they are undertaking a geofencing campaign themselves. Just like that example with H&M, your location data will not go to H&M, but instead it will go to to this firm working for Israel. And the reason that this firm is doing this on behalf of Israel is because Israel wants to deliver, and this is a quote from the firm, deliver pro-Israel messaging and anti-Palestinian ads to millions of worshipers. So they're collecting this data at churches. And that's the reason I mentioned, more sensitive locations earlier on, is because a lot of people, when they go to church, they're going there for, all kinds of reasons that are personal to them. But this is a sensitive location. And as they're there, the physical boundaries of the church are being geofenced, meaning it's activating this like data point when you're walking in with your phone, and apps that you have running on in the background will send that data to data brokers, which will then be bought by which will then be paid by this firm to deliver these kinds of ads to, they estimate around 4 million different churchgoers in these states.
Do you have any idea what kind of ads? I mean, do you have a sample? Were you able to see any of them? Like, what do they say, for instance, about the Palestinians, that you consider it anti-Palestinian, or or it's still in the making process?
Yeah, it seems like it's still in the making process. I was curious, so I asked the person who's undertaking this operation that question exactly, and he said that his name is Chad Schnittger. He's the president of the California chapter of the Faith and Freedom Coalition, which is a prominent evangelical organization. And he is the one who signed this contract with the government of Israel. And I asked him, I said, what kind of ads are you planning on running? Because the contract itself doesn't really say much beyond being pro-Israel and anti-Palestinian. And he said that the ads might include invitations. This is a quote. He said it might include invitations for Christians to visit one of our upcoming mobile museum exhibits, and I'll explain what that is in a second, or to go to our website to learn more about the program, or to visit Israel with your church. So it's a little bit different from what the contract was saying about, pro-Israel and anti-Palestinian. There's not really any reference to Palestine in there, at least on the surface. But the mobile museum exhibit is a reference to, there's this trailer that they're going to be building out that's going to be traveling to churches and Christian colleges. And it's going to be called, at least tentatively in the contract, the October 7th experience. And it's going to have VR headsets for people to relive the horrors of October 7th. But part of this is also they're going to be including footage of IDF soldiers talking about how difficult it is to, and this is also a direct quote, quote unquote, fight bad guys in hostile territory. So that's partly what they're doing, and we don't unfortunately have more on exactly what those ads entail, but it's something I'll be tracking and trying to figure out exactly what those look like. But part of it is also, as he mentioned, trying to get churches to visit Israel.
Did you mention how many people this should cover? Like how many millions? Is it millions or tens of thousands of Americans or hundreds of thousands? And it's concentrated in a certain geographic area, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's starting with about 4 million churchgoers. I think it's 3.8 million churchgoers. And it's they're piloting it in California, which is where Chad Schnittger is based. He's the president of the California chapter. And so California seems to really be their base, but they're also going into Arizona, Colorado, Nevada. And of course, there's geographical limitations on some of the things that they're planning on doing, like driving that trailer around to different churches and colleges. Like when I asked, because they hinted that they wanted to go to Texas, Wyoming, Utah, and I asked him about that, and he said, well, for now, Texas is it's too big of a state, it's too far to drive to. But they clearly see this as like a pilot program, and if it goes well, then they might expand to more states.
Do you think?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add, it's mostly conservative evangelical mega churches are the ones that they single out. So, not every church is listed on here. But, I reached out because I was curious if a lot of these churches were even aware, because, 4 million people is a lot of people. It's a lot of pastors. And so I was curious, are a lot of these churches even aware that this is happening? Because in the initial, I initially wrote a piece about this, and he told me that they're doing everything through teams of Christian pastors, but didn't really provide more details on what that meant. So I reached out to kind of as many churches that are mentioned here as I could, and not a single one that got back to me indicated that they were aware of this campaign in any way. And kind of on the contrary, what I heard from a lot of congregations, not so much church leadership, but congregations themselves, parishioners, they would tell me that they have a lot of concerns about this.
In what way, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I can read a few of.
Do they feel like this is propagandizing rather than an outreach, for instance?
Yeah, that's definitely something I heard, is that people felt as though they were viewing Christians as a demographic to be targeted and manipulated rather than something engaging in respectful outreach. There was, for instance, someone in Texas who his church was listed as a potential target, and he said that he was deeply upset to see that his church was on this list, and that he felt that Israel was whitewashing its atrocities by propagandizing the good people of Christ United Methodist Church in Plano, Texas. And I heard similar things from people in Scottsdale, Arizona, in Colorado Springs, in Prescott, Arizona. So, the people that did want to talk to me were pretty overwhelmingly concerned about their own privacy, concerned that about where this data was going, and concerned that it just didn't feel respectful, that it felt, one person told me it was warfare language, just looking at the way in which it was talking about outreach to Christians in the initial contract.
I'm going to ask you something, Nick, but maybe it's not fair, but if you can answer it. Does this have anything to do with the fact that maybe there is some sort of a reviewing of, for instance, like if you remember, Ted Cruz was being interviewed by Tucker Carlson, and there was a discussion over what the Bible means when the Bible says if you support Israel, you are blessed, and if you don't, you are cursed, something to that effect. Do you think that they have a feeling that there is some sort of a revival happening among some Christian Americans where they are reevaluating the meaning of Israel in the Bible, and if it's really the ancient Israel or the modern state Israel, and they want to immediately jump on this development and curb it or sway it?
Definitely. Yeah, I think we very much see that. I mean, there are a lot of evangelicals, especially young evangelicals, that have started to question this, ironclad support for the U.S.-Israel relationship. And a lot of that is clearly, a lot of this effort is clearly geared towards regaining support from those young evangelicals. I mean, I can read you a few of the talking points from the contract itself, because a lot of them reference these talking points. I mean, there's one that says, there was never a state of Palestine at any time in history. Palestinian and Iranian goals are not land-focused, but genocidal. It also talks, more directly to your point about the Bible, educates or highlight history of Gaza, wasted opportunities to modernize in favor of conflict and terrorism, all kinds of things. And a lot of it is, related to these historical arguments, but very much relating them to current events, talking about how history is very much on their side, and how they need to support Israel for all of these reasons, and how Islam has historically been used to attack Christians and all these things. So there's very much a historical argument, but they then always tend to bring it back to what's happening today.
This is True Talk on WMNF 88.5, and we're speaking with Nick Cleveland Stout with the Quincy Institute about Israel pushing out propaganda and targeting different groups, especially churchgoers. I want to shift about something similar, where Israel was running these ads, and the Washington Post actually wrote about it, that Google continued to run these Israeli ads and receive millions of dollars from Israel, ads that were denying that a famine existed, as Palestinians basically were starving, and the UN was declaring there's a famine. The whole world knows it's a famine, but Israel is pumping millions and millions of dollars into platforms like YouTube to run ads that basically are saying there is food in Gaza. Any other claim is a lie, and it would show this kind of older footage and other footage that there's plenty of food in restaurants and people are celebrating, pushing out obvious lies. But even countries like Poland went as far as Poland called on Google to remove the Israeli ads, denying that there's a Gaza famine that happened like a month ago. But YouTube and other tech companies like Twitter continue to run this campaign. Obviously, it was a critical campaign for the Israelis to push out that there's no starvation, because that became one of the biggest issues of contention that was making Israel look really bad and hurt its reputation a lot in the past couple of months. So, what can you say about the relationship between that maybe your observation that you observed between Israel and these tech companies pushing out obvious lies and propaganda?
Yeah, I mean, there are a set of talking points that are coming out from that the Israeli government clearly wants to be put out, and this is key among them. You know, the fact that they say that there is not starvation happening in Gaza. This is something that we have seen also from influencers who have been paid by the Israeli government to travel to Israel. There was a cohort, for instance, in August that received $86,000 from the government of Israel in order to go out there and meet with top officials. And, you know, a lot of them said very similar things about how the famine in Gaza was fake news. And there's just this alternative kind of set of facts that the Israeli government is putting out, and that tech companies seem to be looking the other way about. You know, YouTube is owned by Google, and it seems like they don't really want to take a stand on this, you know, in part because they probably don't want to anger the Trump administration, which has, you know, the Trump has positioned himself as the most pro-Israel president, and they might be worried about antitrust and things like that. I mean, you know, with a lot of what Israel is doing currently relies on the compliance of tech companies. For instance, the geofencing campaign, all of that is done because these data brokers are able to sweep up data points based on location from Google, from Meta, from all kinds of tech companies. And there's also even a paid influencer campaign where Israel is paying influencers directly in order to post on behalf of Israel.
Right.
And they're being paid a lot of money in order to do that. And so social media is clearly central to Israel's public relations campaign. And Bibi Netanyahu has made it clear that it will continue to be the most important weapon. That's a direct quote. You know, he was talking to some influencers a couple of weeks ago, and he said that TikTok was the most important purchase happening right now, given that it's going to, you know, most likely Larry Ellison, who is the largest private donor to the IDF. And so social media is central to this entire campaign.
That's why this whole debate that they had like a year ago about that TikTok is so dangerous because of the Chinese was laughable to me, because that's always been the case, but it only became a problem for these politicians that actually got momentum once TikTok, things were trending on TikTok against Israel, and Israel felt like they couldn't control it, and there wasn't much they can do. So they basically used their influence in Congress to try to shut it down. I mean, they went as far as just trying to ban TikTok, and this was happening under Biden. The whole banning TikTok was under Biden, and they said it's because of the Chinese, when in reality, the only thing that would satisfy them was if it, was transferred ownership to somebody that's pro-Israel, and that's what's happening. And the words of Netanyahu to those influencers, social media influencers at the on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly meeting, emphasizes that. And now TikTok is likely going in the hands of Larry Ellison, like you said. CBS, Paramount, is gone into the hands of Larry Ellison, again, run by his son. And they brought in Barry Wise, one of the most staunch Zionists in media in America, to run that outfit. They also, during her time at the Free Press, they ran campaigns denying that there was starvation. So they had this whole denial of starvation on all fronts, and they're spending so much money on the media. And Israel is one of the biggest recipients. If Israel is the biggest recipient of U.S. foreign aid, and all of that comes from our tax dollars, I'm wondering if a lot of that money is actually being funneled back into America to influence lawmakers and to influence churches. And just to get back to the issue of churches, they've convinced Christians that somehow it's part of their faith to establish the state of Israel. And God will not bless Christians unless they bless the current state of Israel. And it seems like they felt like that was slipping a little bit because of conservative influencers like Tucker Carlson and maybe Candace Owens and others that are actually, rethinking some of that stuff. And so do they feel like they're losing the evangelical support and the Christian support in America? And I think it was even brought up in one of the conversations with those influencers with Netanyahu.
Definitely. I mean, what's clear is that American support in general is slipping for Israel and Israeli military action in Gaza, and that's especially true with young people. And so looking at like evangelicals, for instance, there was a poll. There's not a lot of great polling breaking up different generations of evangelicals, at least that I've seen. But I came across one from a couple of years ago that indicated that, and this is actually before October 7th, but it found that support for Israel among evangelicals aged 18 to 29 had dropped from 75% to 34%. This is from Barna Group. I'd be very curious to see whether that trend has only continued because of all of the outspoken criticism that you mentioned from people like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and people that have been questioning whether support for Israel is really within their interests, and especially amidst everything that people are seeing with their own two eyes of what's been coming out of Gaza over the last 2 years.
Right. Samar, we have some emails, and I think that people have sent in. I don't know. One just stands out because earlier we said that, and this is before Nick joined us. We had said that one of the things that the Israeli media or the media in the United States is leaving out the fact that the hostages the dead hostages that are in Gaza, the Israeli hostages, were killed by Israeli bombs. They were not killed by Hamas, and the media is leaving that out as if it's Hamas that killed them. And one of the reasons why they're having a difficulty retrieving their bodies because they're under rubble that was created by the massive bombs of the Israeli military. So one person sent in a message saying Hamas killed the hostages. If they never took the hostages, then they would have never been in that situation, whether it was Israel bombs or not. It's still the fault of Hamas. I don't know if you have a comment on that, Samar,
We
or
can
not.
use the same logic and say, yes, if there is no occupation, there won't be Hamas and there won't be resistance and there won't be an October 7th. Same logic. So if he wants to go to the dig into the past, let him or her go back to 1948 and 1936 and to the Sykes-Picot and figure out who is occupying who and who who created this whole mess in that part of the world.
It's actually a miracle that they were able to keep so many alive despite all the bombardment and the strikes and everything else. It's just, and most of them, when they return, they look, somewhat healthy, a lot more healthy than, the people on the Palestinian side that were starving.
Actually, Ahmed Haaretz writes more about the reaction of the families of the hostages and the hostages. A father yesterday went out to say that Hamas brought this hostage an Israeli prayer book, and they were allowing him to pray, and he prayed 3 times a day, the Jewish prayer. So there is so much out there to say, but our media kind of censors that. But because Nick is still with us, I want to ask him about something that I just saw you published on October 7, Nick, which is the idea of hiring Chris Pratt and Steph Curry. Who are probably people know who
You don't know
they are.
Steph Curry? Come on, that's
Yeah,
don't embarrass yourself.
no, I know he's a basketball player or something.
He's not. He's the most famous basketball player ever.
Okay, I know Michael Jordan and all the old
Michael
ones.
Jordan was like 20 years ago.
Okay, I'm 10
You're
years
you're
old.
helping me settle a debate. When I published this article, then I described this list of celebrities as all A-list celebrities, and people took issue with that. There was consensus that Steph Curry was an A-list celebrity, but surprisingly, people thought that Chris Pratt was a B-lister. So I don't know if you guys want to weigh in on that. I think he's an A-lister. I think Guardians of the Galaxy was such a huge hit that has to qualify him. But yeah, so this article is basically about how this same firm actually, they're as part of this contract, they're trying to hire a number of celebrity spokespeople in order to work on behalf of Israel as part of this contract. And so it mentioned a few people, Christian celebrities that could potentially carry that torch. And it mentions Chris Pratt, actor Chris Pratt of Guardians of the Galaxy and Garfield fame, former NFL player Tim Tebow, and an NBA player Steph Curry, and Jon Voight, actor Jon Voight. And according to the document, these celebrities would be expected to deliver pro-Israel messaging, and didn't really get into
John
details.
Voight will do it for free. He's already a super Zionist. Like he doesn't need to get paid for doing it. But the others, I guess, Tim Tebow and other, these are like kind of wholesome American, like, heroes and stars. So did any of them actually agree to doing this, or this is just kind of speculating on
It's just speculate. These were listed as potential spokespeople. It's funny you
potential?
mentioned that about Voight, because Voight's spokesperson or public relations executive got back to me, and she just responded with an email saying that basically it's a good thing that Israel is trying to hire celebrities, and that Voight hadn't agreed to it or anything like that, but that there's a quote. She said that it's a good thing that Israel is trying to combat the pro-Pali propaganda machine, and that they should choose some who are appealing to the Gen Alphas and millennials, because that is where all the misinformation lies. So it seems like Voight might consider something like this if he were offered. But yeah, none of these people, I should say, have agreed to this as of now. And there was also a part of this contract that indicated that they're trying to pay stipends to pastors themselves. So not just celebrities, but people that are religious leaders within communities that people really trust. And that they would be given a stipend in order to record messages and create content on behalf of this firm that's working for Israel.
Such corruption. I mean, this is not a stipend. This is really bribing people to push lies. I mean, let's face it. And if you're a pastor or a pastor of your church becomes on the payroll of Israel, that is not a church you should continue to be going to. Netanyahu is wanted for war crimes by the ICC. A genocide took place. You don't want to be, especially if you're a religious person, to mislead your congregation towards such evil. But it shows you how desperate that they're getting and how bad the reputation and the image of Israel has been. I saw a poll or some polling recently that compared the reputation or the image of Israel or sympathies with Israel in the United States, where they lied before October 7th and then, 2 years later now. And it has gone down 50 points before, or, something like 48% of the people in America that were polled sympathized with the Israeli side, and now actually it's the other way around. Plus 1% are for the Palestinians. So, like, a swing of 50 points that has happened. And Palestine is not running any propaganda campaign. They don't have the funding. But somehow Van Jones went on, the Bill Maher show and said that Qatar is funding and financing all these ads on social media. Of course, he apologized for it later, but he was trying to say that they're pushing out this disinformation about starvation and other things.
Which there's no evidence for it. There's worth repeating, and I'll just note also with Israel's influence operations that they have historically kept off of the Foreign Agents Registration Act, which is the U.S.'s premier foreign lobbying law. If you are registering on behalf of a foreign government and doing lobbying on behalf of a foreign government, you have to disclose those activities with the Department of Justice. But we are seeing a huge shift in that. And to your point about how a lot of this is in reaction to these polls and a sign of the times, a sign of slipping support for Israel and Israel feeling as though it needs to recoup that support. There have been 6 different firms that have registered for Israel in the past month and a half under FARA, which is more than the previous 2 years combined. And so it's clear that they no longer can rely on what has historically been, this ironclad relationship and a lot of organic support from constituencies in the U.S. That believe strongly in a U.S.-Israel relationship. They can no longer rely on that. They need to get far more involved directly. And so they're splashing a lot of money in order to make that happen. And they're splashing that money on social media channels. The public diplomacy budget that Israel has, they allocated $150 million for it through this fiscal year. And just 2 weeks ago, Haaretz reported that they actually increased it by $40 million. So it went from $150 million through the fiscal year to $190 million. And that money is getting spent on trying to change people's viewpoints, get people to see Israel's side of things and also bring delegations to Israel, all kinds of things. But it's clear that Israel is making an investment in reaction to the kinds of polls that you just cited.
Right. Well, with that, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Nick Cleveland Stout, for joining us from the Quincy Institute. We hope to have you back on in the future. People can find you on Twitter or at X under the name Nick_Cleveland S. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
So, Samar, we're got a couple of minutes left. There's a couple of emails that were sent in. Betty sent in a message saying that Biden was weak. Betty from Sarasota, Biden was weak, and Bibi waited for Trump to get elected. This way, they could be seen as the heroes. Such corruption, the genocide could have ended months ago. And Sarah sends in and says that hands, feet shackled, shot in the head, some run over by tanks, and those released, some unable to walk. The death count is 60,000, is a vast undercurrent or undercount. What about all those buried under the rubble? Trump is using this. He could have ended this on his first day of office. Trump does nothing that isn't full of self-interest. And let's talk about this in a month or two. So this is, she says she loves our show. Thanks for your email. And somebody sent a message with your subject line saying, Samar is right. Now, of course, I don't know if I should read this or not, but he's saying, he's quoting a drop site article that says, Israel has killed 23 Palestinians during the ceasefire. Dr. Hossein Abu Sofia to remain in Israeli prison. So I guess you're right that maybe Israel is the one violating the rules. And a text that was sent in, yes, the War of 1948, when there was to be a two-state between the two, and instead of agreeing to it, Palestinians decided to join the Arab nations to destroy Israel. That's something that we always hear from pro-Israel side, that somehow in 1948, Israel rejected, but we're kind of out of time somewhere, so we don't have time to respond. Hopefully we can respond to that next week, because this is WMNF Tampa. Then Scoop is next, and we'll see here next time, next week, where we respond to this. Yes, in 1948, the Palestinians decided not to agree to their own state, and that's